to start up our own operation as young married people ourselves.
But past generations of experience that helped them thrive here may not be enough in a warming world.
I think it's just a trend that we're going through. I hope it is anyway. It'd be very difficult to keep ranching because a lot of this country's ungrazable, unusable for cattle if we don't have water. And if it turned into a desert type of climate, it wouldn't be cattle here.
Warming of just 1 degree could turn some of America's most fertile ranch land into desert again. 6,000 years ago, much of the American West was part of a vast desert dominating the continent. A minor shift in the Earth's orbit caused the summer sun to warm slightly, just enough to radically transform this entire region. Only a very thin layer of topsoil covers the desert sand. It still lurks just inches below the surface. All it took was 1 or 2 degrees warmer, and the moisture disappeared. The 1930s gave us a glimpse of just how fragile the land can be.
So think of a repeat of the Dust Bowl situation and multiply it by about 20. This could devastate a huge part of the western United States.
But a shift of only about 1 degree could transform cattle country into a wasteland of searing heat and relentless drought. For now, the sands under this shallow soil are stable. But for how long? As we race toward a planet warmer by 1 degree, the global warming scorecard lists both losers and winners. While the western U.S. is dry and thirsty, England is enjoying an agricultural makeover. Fortunes will be made and lost if global weather patterns rearrange where different crops can be grown.
The winters, which used to be very hard in this country, are getting much, much milder, and so in some senses that's a good thing. That's of course not counterbalanced by the devastation which is affecting other parts of the world.
Right now, England is in the right place at the right time for one of the world's most fragile and most valuable crops.
You can't have it too hot for grapes. Of course, you realize in the Champagne region now it's becoming too hot.
When David Middleton first planted Champagne-style grapes, neighbors thought he'd gone mad. But as wine-producing regions in France are getting hotter, the climate for growing grapes is migrating across the English Channel. The idea of a fine English wine is no longer a joke. Now there are more than 400 vineyards in Britain. Middleton is planting another crop that's astonishing for England, again made possible by climate change: olive trees from Tuscany.
The olives will love it here. Our temperature in the summer will be out of the Mediterranean shortly, so therefore they will enjoy it and we will enjoy the olives later as well.
None of this would have been possible only a short time ago. The Earth's average temperature has always fluctuated, and a variable climate isn't unusual. It's the pace of climate change today that's unprecedented.
If you had asked us 10 or 20 years ago, what would be the impact of 1 or 2 degrees additional warming, we would say, well, probably we can live with that.
NASA climate scientist James Hansen was one of the first to sound the alarm about global warming. The threat has only escalated as he's struggled to be heard.
What we realize now is that we're getting so close to tipping points that we're going to have to stabilize atmospheric CO2.
Studying climates in the past has given Hansen a window onto the dangers posed by global warming.
In the last million years, it's never been more than 1 degree Celsius warmer than it is now. What we are doing now with the human-made greenhouse gases is an order of magnitude larger, and it's being introduced very rapidly.
The planet has experienced climate change before, but it usually plays out over thousands or millions of years. Now global warming is measured in decades, even years. It means scores of species won't be able to keep up. Warming at this speed could send us into uncharted territory, like nothing we've experienced in the history of life on Earth. Global warming started with our insatiable appetite for energy. Every switch we flip, every plug, every button we push to turn something on inevitably leads back to a place like this. Nearly 90% of the world's energy starts as a fossil fuel. Coal, oil, natural gas. But the chemistry of burning fossilized remains of prehistoric plants and animals is inescapable. Carbon dioxide. These three fuels combined are the single largest source of CO2 emissions pouring into the atmosphere. They've enhanced the quality of life for generations. It's hard to imagine getting along without them. Product by product, it may not seem like a lot to make one pair of sunglasses or light one sign. But the carbon impact of everything we do adds up.
I got to wondering, what's the carbon impact of something like a cheeseburger? Americans, all 300 million of us, eat an average of 3 cheeseburgers every week. And so that's like 150 cheeseburgers for each one of us every year. That's billions of cheeseburgers in the United States alone every year.
Among the scientists and other experts investigating climate change, Jamé Cassio has staked out a unique territory.
I had to be able to calculate the numbers, calculate the actual solid, numerical, quantitative footprint of a cheeseburger.
The carbon footprint means all the energy that was consumed every step of the way for each of a cheeseburger's component parts.
When you look at the feedstock that goes to feed the cattle, growing the lettuce, growing the wheat that gets transformed into the bun, and milking the cattle, processing the milk into cheese, processing the cattle into beef, trucking all that stuff around, keeping it cold, it turns out each burger has a pretty significant carbon footprint of its own.
And carbon dioxide isn't the only greenhouse gas that's produced in the end.
But then it struck me, there's another critical part of the overall greenhouse gas footprint that I wasn't including. Methane. Methane from cattle. Well, the FDA calls it very politely enteric fermentation. It's what comes out of the cow. And methane, as it turns out, is the equivalent of at least 23 units of carbon dioxide.
Add it all up, all those cheeseburgers, and all that CO2, and you've got a very big number.
Pretty close to 200 million metric tons. 200 million metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalent just from cheeseburgers in the United States.
Cassio has calculated that there are even more greenhouse gas emissions every year from cheeseburgers than from all the SUVs in the United States.
And this is just one kind of food. Think about all of the enormous variety of things that we purchase, we buy, we consume, and you realize that It's these everyday activities that are really the critical aspect of human activity leading to global warming.
Even at the lower end of the climate forecast, there could be fundamental changes in the way the planet functions. If the temperature rises beyond +1 degree, it could threaten nature's delicate balance. From the bottom of the oceans to the world's highest peaks. If the world warms by 2 degrees, some changes to the biosphere are no longer gradual. Greenland's glaciers are disappearing. So much ice has melted, polar bears struggle to survive. Insects migrate in strange new directions. As a temperate climate moves north in the U.S., pine beetles kill off the white bark forests, a grizzly bear's key source of food in the fall. New forests take root in Canada's melting tundra. The Pacific islands of Tuvalu are lost beneath the rising tides of global warming. This could be our world +2 degrees.
At 2 degrees of warming, the impacts in the marine ecosystem are going to be much more severe. We're likely to lose the vast majority of the world's tropical coral reefs.
It's a problem that's keeping Ove Herr Goldberg up late into the night.
To some, it might seem almost incredible that we could change something as vast as the ocean. I mean, the Pacific Ocean, I mean, if you just take that huge bowl of water, how could we change it?
A marine biologist at the University of Queensland in Australia, Ove is tracking changes in coral reefs.
They're acting a little bit like a canary in the coal mine. Miners used to take a little bird down with them, and when the bird got sick, they knew to withdraw because there was gas building up in the mine. Well, coral reefs are, a beautiful, biodiverse part of the Earth, and the very fact that that's disappearing should have all of us worried, just like the canary in the coal mine.
Located on the Great Barrier Reef, along the northeast coast of Australia, his lab is on the front lines in the war against climate change. Recently, the Great Barrier Reef suffered 2 massive bleaching events. When waters warmed past the coral's tolerance of 86 degrees Fahrenheit, they began expelling the algae they need to survive. Large sections of the reef died.
When you jump off the side of a boat and you see a bleaching event, it really comes home to you, the scale of the changes that are going on. What would happen if we woke up one morning and 1 in every 5 trees in our favourite forest had just disappeared? Well, that's what's been happening in coral reefs.
More than 1 million different species live, feed, and breed around reefs. They need the reef. They literally can't live without it. Another recent trend in the oceans, far beyond coral reefs,